Hello, and thank you for joining us for the academic support episode of our 2020 Family Orientation. Today, we're going to be talking about the resources and the services and the people on campus that can help students be successful in the classroom. We know this is a very important topic for parents. I received a lot of questions that fall into this category. We also know that you have a lot of questions about what the classroom experience is going to look like this year in terms of COVID procedures. And I just want everyone to know we're not going to be talking about that in this particular video, but we will be sharing information in another interview later in the summer, so stay tuned. Today, instead, we're just going to be talking about academic success overall and what students can do and what you as parents can do to support your student in that when they arrive at RIT. Joining me are two of our campus experts on this topic, Heath Boyce-Pardee and Lynn Mazadorian. And before we get into the questions, I'm going to ask them both to introduce themselves and tell our families a little bit about what you do on campus. So Lynn, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Lynn Mazadorian, and I'm the Assistant Vice President for Student Success in the Division of Academic Affairs. And one of my roles is to oversee the undergraduate academic advising program. So I work with all colleges to make sure that we have a stable advising program for our undergraduate students, which means that there are a lot of similarities in advising no matter what program your student's in. We also administer the Starfish program, which you'll learn more about in this conversation.
Hi everyone, I'm Heath Boyce-Pardee and I'm an Associate Vice President for Student Affairs here at RIT, and I've been at RIT for 14 years. Some of the things that I manage under my purview are academic support programs or academic success programs, which we'll talk about a little bit today. And also is under my purview is the first year course RIT 365 that many of your students will be participating in. So we have lots to talk about.
Yes, and Lynn and Heath are always a big part of our family orientation programming. So even though it looks a little bit differently this year, thank you both for joining us. I'm really happy to have you. So the very first question that I have written down is actually very relevant. I just responded to an email this morning about this question. So when does an incoming student register for their classes? Lynn, would you like to start us off?
Sure, great question. Actually, our incoming new students don't register for classes. Their academic advisors take care of that for them. And there's a reason for that. Many of our programs start sequencing right away. So we want to make sure that we build schedules for students that meet requirements for their academic program, whether it's general education or major requirements. So that's going to happen in early August, the first week in August. And then we actually block schedules for a little while because we do a lot of moving around and we know that that can be stressful for students. So we block schedules for about a week, and then maybe a week before you arrive on campus or your student arrives on campus, they'll be able to see their schedule. At that point, if they have any questions or if something seems a little funny, they can check in with their academic advisor who is listed in SIS.
Great, so you actually just led into question number 2, which is how does a student know who their academic advisor is? So can you explain a little bit more about SIS and how they find their advisor's name?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. So SIS is our student information system, and it will be where your student does a lot of their work for registering in the future, as well as looking up class schedules and other things. On SIS, there's a front page that lists academic advisors, and your student may have more than one academic advisor, actually. They'll have a primary academic advisor who's their first point of contact. It's a professional staff member who works in their college and is very familiar with their program and requirements. They may be assigned a faculty advisor as well, who they'll build a relationship with a little further along in their academic program. Probably not in their first semester, although they could if they wanted to. And then they'll, depending on different populations that they identify with, they may have support advisors assigned to them as well. Our Higher Ed Opportunity Program, also called HEOP, and other programs assign support advisors for students. So there's one other place where students can find their advisors, and that's in Starfish. And your student will get into Starfish once they come on campus and get acquainted with that a little bit more.
Yeah, I love that there's multiple advisors to help with different things, and not particularly as relevant to this video, but students will also have a co-op advisor down the road. They have a financial aid advisor. There are people all over the campus to support students. And I know I like to say that primary academic advisor, though, is oftentimes a really good first point of contact if a student doesn't know where to go for help.
Absolutely. And as Chelsea said, there's a huge network of support for your student. They just need to make sure that they're comfortable connecting with those people.
So Lynn, Heath, you can chime in too whenever you have some words of wisdom to say. What happens if a parent wants to talk to an advisor? How does that happen?
So we have something called FERPA, the Federal Educational Rights Privacy Act, which prevents people from sharing specifics about a student's academic record. However, we can talk to families about many, many things on campus and related to academic programs that aren't specific to a student's academic record. So I often encourage families to start with the assistant dean in the college or our office to find out the information that they need to see if they really need to talk to the academic advisor, because usually a student and the advisor have a pretty strong relationship already, but there is nothing preventing a parent from talking with an advisor. And often if a student has not signed a release form for advisors and parents to talk specifically about their academic record, an advisor can share plenty of information about our processes, our policies, so that a family member can probably get their question answered without needing to know anything about their own student's record.
I always like to use the example of, we won't tell you if your student failed a class, but we can talk about what happens if a student does and how you can support your student through that process. And then our hope really is that parents have those conversations directly with the student, because we want to make sure the student is at the center of all of these conversations.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chelsea. I often say to students, your parents probably have finished their degrees already, and I've got mine. So we're really going to focus on making sure you have the right information so you can finish yours.
Right. So we now know that an advisor is a great place for students to go if they have any questions or if they need help. But Heath, can you talk a little bit more about where students can go or what should they do if they feel like they're struggling in a class?
Yeah, absolutely, Chelsea. And I think the biggest issue there is that when a student finds out that they're struggling or feels like they're struggling, that they go somewhere. So there are lots of places that they can go. In fact, some of them may very well go to an advisor to share, like, hey, I don't know, this is not working well. Can I withdraw? Should I switch a class? Should I drop it? Whatever I should do. But I think in addition to an advisor, the biggest thing I always advise students when they're struggling with a class is to go and talk to the professor, to say, hi, here I am, here's who I am, and I'm really struggling with this content, and can you help me? And professors have office hours. And even though in the fall, those might look a little differently, some may be doing them in person with social distancing, some may be doing them virtually, it doesn't matter. They can sign up and just talk to the professor. I always think it's really important for professors to know, and I teach as well, it's important for me to know when my students say, I'm really struggling with this, can you help me? There are other places that people can go. Students can always go to the Academic Success Center. And in the Academic Success Center, there's a wide range of programs and services and staff, as well as peer coaches that they can talk to about a variety of issues. So oftentimes, the issues in a class don't have anything to do with the content. They actually have to do with managing being in the class. So time management issues, how to look at a textbook, how to take notes, how to do all those sorts of things. And I think any one of the resources that I've talked about can do that, but the folks in the Academic Success Center are always available, and that's their area of expertise. So they will hone in on what the issue is, and they will give strategies and tips to help overcome them.
And the Academic Success Center is for everyone on campus, but a lot of the colleges have their own support as well. Do either of you have any information about that we can share with students about how they can find that college-specific support?
So there is often content tutoring, say chemistry or biology, in an academic department, and students can check in with their advisors or their department chair or undergrad coordinator to find out more about the resources. I'm guessing though that most faculty who have those resources within their department are very good about sharing it in class as well as on their syllabus. And I think that this is a good time to give a good plug for encouraging your student to really get to know the syllabus in their class. Sometimes it's a good thing to look at the beginning of the semester, and then it goes away in a backpack or stays on My Courses, which is our online course management system. But if a student is worried about how much a grade counts or when it's due, usually they can find that 24/7 in their syllabus. So please encourage your students that syllabi are still very important.
And I might jump in and add that when students do go, especially when they go to a faculty member and say that they're having a challenge, one of the first questions could be, have you looked at the syllabus? And the student may be like, no, I don't know. So it's always important for students to say, I've read the syllabus, I still don't understand. And that's a good starting off point. But to your point, Chelsea, also about tutoring is, there's also general tutoring in some like math and physics that is offered through the Academic Success Center at different places on campus. That can happen in the student union on campus. That can also happen in one of the colleges, as well as in the residence halls. So there's lots of places that students can get connected if they need it. We try to put tutoring where students need it most, where they are.
Right, that's great. So Heath, you started to touch on this next question a little bit, but I'd like to go back to it. A lot of times, I hear from parents, but my student never struggled in high school, so why are they struggling now? And so, you talked about how a lot of times it's not the subject matter, but it's that time management that really gets to college students that they're not used to. So can we talk a little bit more about why a student might struggle in college, even if they didn't when they were in high school?
Yeah, I think it has to do with environment, really. They're in a totally new place. Imagine, and many of us have gone to college, and it's hard to remember way back then. But, I remember in my own experience, I was a good student in high school. I was a big fish in a little pond, and I went to not a big college, certainly not as big as RIT, but I was a little, from my perspective, I was a little fish in a really big pond. And that was totally different. My identity was totally different at that point. And it took me a couple of months to reclaim that, to figure out who was I going to be in this place. And, some people may say, well, yeah, but what does that have to do with physics? Well, it has everything to do with physics, because if I'm trying to figure out my place and trying to figure out my comfort level of where I am in my new home, that's going to impact everything. That's going to impact my coursework. That's going to impact how I interact with people. That's going to impact so many things. So I think it's important that we all note that regardless of I did well in high school or I didn't, they're in a new place. They're in a totally new environment, and they're going to have to figure out things that are different. In high school, schedules are for the most part very set, right? And, then I come home and then I do these sorts of things and I have these structures, and those structures don't exist at college. They have a class at 8 and their next class isn't until 4. And, oh, what do I do in that time in between? Do I take a nap? Do I watch Netflix? Oh, I could do homework. Trying to figure out all of those things is really hard. And, when everybody in your residence hall isn't going to bed at 11 o'clock at night and they're staying up until midnight or 1 or 2, it can be really hard. So I think that it's important for everyone to take a breath, to recognize this is all new, it's going to take some adjustment, and then once they get sort of acclimated, then usually everything will fall into place. But sometimes they need a little help getting acclimated, and that's what we're here to do.
And I also think that perfection is not the goal here. I think that it's really important to stress that mastery in some of these courses is not going to happen after one evening of homework. And that students may get a C on an exam when they've always just aced exams, and that's okay. Our faculty are really excited about students learning and about challenging students to learn, but there will be a need to put in time and consistent revisiting of the information in order to really excel. So, you know, a lot of times a parent will call me and say, my student might fail a class, or my student might get a C. And there's a lot to talk about there. And I think that you know, there may be varying reasons why a student is not achieving success in a course. But the thing that I would say is, even if the outcome isn't what the student expected and what you as parents expect, one F on a transcript or one C on a transcript is not going to make or break their career. And sometimes that's the most compelling story that a student can tell in a job interview about persisting after taking a course that was really challenging, or how they corrected a situation. So we are not as worried. Of course, we hope that students have academic success each term and consistently, but we are not as worried if a student has a hiccup or a bump along the road.
And
And I
again,
really appreciated what you just said, because I always say it's not about the failure, it's about what you do after it. And if a failure is an F or a C, or just, you know, not doing well on a test, it's really how they pick themselves up and move on. That's the most important thing. And the only other thing I would add is that it's perfectly normal for students to struggle, you know, in a lot of different ways. And so it's no reason to be overly concerned or freak out about, even though we know you might as parents. Keith,
when I
did you have
was
something to add?
yeah, when I was an undergrad, my very first term, I think my very first term I might have gotten 2 Ds. And I think during my whole college career, I think I ended up with like 3 Ds or something like that, and still graduated with a really good GPA. And I remember my advisor, I still remember, and she said, "How did you graduate with a 3.4 with all of those Ds?" And I was like, I got a lot of A's. I don't, you know, like it just, I didn't know anything about political science my first term, and I was studying political science, and I didn't know anything, and I didn't know who to go to, and I just got a D, and I just did. And then I figured it out, and then I didn't get as many after that. So didn't hurt my career at all.
Yeah, I saw Lynn raise her hand when you said that you got some D's, and I could raise my hand too. And I'd like to point out that all 3 of us have advanced degrees. So what happened our first few semesters of college did not impact any of us in the future.
Nope.
So speaking of that, how does a student know how they're doing in a course?
That's a great question, Chelsea. There are a few different places where a student should be looking. The first place is in My Courses. And My Courses, as I mentioned earlier, is our online course management system. And as parents, you're probably very familiar with a similar system that your student had in K through 12 education. But this is where all faculty post minimally their syllabus and their grade book, but many of our faculty put all their materials in there. Many don't. Many have supplemental websites, but it's a very, very good place to start and check a grade book. The next place is to check their email and or Starfish to see if their professor has given them any academic alerts. So we have a way for faculty to communicate with students if they choose to use it, to notify students when they're concerned about their performance. They can also tell a student when they're really pleased with their performance. And so that's called Starfish, and students get notifications via email if their faculty sends either an alert or a kudos to say good work. The third place is their syllabus, to make sure that what they're concerned about or what they're not sure about is something that's even being graded or factored into their grade in a meaningful way. So sometimes I'll have students come to me and they'll be freaking out about an in-class assignment that was just really uncomfortable for them or hard, or they hadn't prepared for it. And we'll look at their syllabus, and it may not even be part of their grade other than participation, at which point we have a conversation about, you know, what was making them uncomfortable and moving forward from that, but it's not a grading issue. But the last place, and maybe the most important place, is to check in directly with their professor. But again, as Heath was saying about checking the syllabus ahead of time, I think it's always helpful for a student to review my courses in the grade book and to check the syllabus to make sure they understand how whatever it is counts, and then have a specific question to ask their faculty member. I'm concerned about my performance here, or I've looked and I think that this assignment that I did really well and is going to help me turn my grade around. Can you confirm that for me? But they really do want to see that a student has done the work first, and that the student has looked for the information before they just go and say, how am I doing?
So when we were just talking about how high school and colleges are different, one thing that we missed is that parent access piece, right? In high school and before that, parents have a lot of access to their students' information. And when they're in college, they don't have that anymore. So can we talk a little bit about grades and how parents can, or if they can, see their students' grades?
So during the term, there is no third-party access for students to offer their parents. That means that you can't go in and check the grade book like you might be used to doing in high school, or you can't directly communicate with the professor to say, how'd that exam go? Did my student make the mark? There is one place where you can go at the end of the term if your student allows you to, which is called e-services. And students can grant permission for family members to see final grades. But that has to be student activated, and they can turn it off at any point as well. So if you have an expectation that your student would share that with you, you might want to have that conversation about your expectations so that they're aware and have that conversation with them. If it's a big challenge, I think, and for those of you who are first-time parents for college students, you know, it feels very risky to be asked in high school to check things all the time and to review grades and work with your student on the grades that you've reviewed, to having no access whatsoever. And so along with that, I really recommend that you set up a communication plan with your student and ask them to notify you at certain points that you both identify that feel right. Maybe you want to review the syllabus together for a course and say, okay, after this exam, I'd like to check in and hear how you did. Or, you know, I don't need to know anything unless you get less than a 70 or whatever threshold feels right for your family. But the more communication you can set up earlier so that your student knows what you expect is really helpful. They generally don't want to leave their parents out, but they also are sometimes afraid to tell parents if it wasn't a 95.
Yeah, I'm so happy you added all that, Lynn. I do think those conversations are so important, and it's important to have them now, not when they're already at RIT and there's distance and it's harder to have those conversations. And I know sometimes in our RIT parent newsletter, we put tips for parents about how to talk about classes, and we'll do that again this fall. So parents understand sometimes just saying, how are your classes going, isn't going to really get you much of an answer, but asking some specific questions about what they're learning, what they're doing in their classes and labs will be a more engaging conversation for parents to have with their students.
Sure, and there's some prompts. Did you receive any alerts? Have you checked in with your professor in office hours? Those sort of things. Again, rather than just how are things going.
Yeah, and I think it's to add to that, you know, I think knowing how the system works and knowing what to ask, you know, like a great point, Lynn, about, you know, did you get any alerts? Oh, I don't think so. Well, you would have gotten that via your email. Did you see anything in your email that said alert or anything like that? You know, just helpful things like that to help redirect them if they're not sure where to look.
Great point.
So there's going to be so many changes for our students coming in and a lot to learn. So Heath, can you talk a little bit about how students can learn about all of this and how we help introduce them to RIT culture and resources?
Yeah, there's a number of ways. And, you know, I mean, the first way really is new student orientation. And, You know, students will be enrolled in lots of online forums even before they get to campus to learn about resources and where things are and those sorts of things. But the other thing at RIT, which actually makes RIT unique in so many ways, is we have a one-of-a-kind course called RIT 365. And there are several goals of that course, but one of the main goals is for students to get connected to campus. And, you know, this fall especially is going to be so important for our students to feel connected to campus. So that course is to get connected to campus through knowing somebody, could be a staff member, could be a faculty member, could be something like that, but also experiencing various things on campus that they may never have experienced before. So that's all within the RIT 365 course that, like I said, most of incoming students will take that course. The course will still look a little differently this fall due to the situation. So the course will be largely happening online. But we are adding one element of the course that's always very successful and popular is one-on-one coaching. And every student during the term will have to meet with both their professional facilitator and a peer facilitator. So they actually have two touch points where they will actually meet with that person just to touch base. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you reaching your goals? Are you feeling connected? Those sorts of things. And we're actually looking at conducting those coaching appointments when possible in person. Obviously, with social distancing, maybe wearing a mask, but we're looking to have that real personal connection, which is one of the hallmarks of this course.
And in addition to the RIT 365 experience, all incoming new students minimally meet with their academic advisor once in their first term. So they'll need to meet with their advisor to talk about course selection for spring. And so they won't be able to register until they've met with an advisor to make sure that they're on track and planning accordingly, but they will register themselves for spring later in fall semester.
So a lot of resources, a lot of people out there to support our students and help them be successful. Again, this is really funny. Both of you said things that prompted this next question. I think the three of us work together so often on this, we just can read each other's minds by now. So I said we weren't going to talk about COVID, but I just want to point out, like, can you talk about things that we've talked about that might change a little bit of what we know of? You know, how does the Academic Success Center work? How do meetings with advisors work? What do we know that might be different this year because of our COVID procedures?
Lynn, you want to start?
Sure, I'll answer about advising. So I think we will definitely be offering advising through Zoom and telephone consultations, as well as offering on-campus advising sessions if spacing is right and social or physical distancing can be achieved. So I think that we have some rooms available. If advisors' spaces are too tight, we have other ways that we can meet in person. But I am pretty sure that your student will likely have at least one of their advising sessions remote through a Zoom meeting this fall. We have a great system for students to sign up for advising electronically. They don't have to email back and forth with their advisor. They can just go in and sign up for a time. And advisors will let students know how they will meet. If a student has a concern about how the meeting's been set up, if they are here on campus and they really want to meet in person and it's been scheduled through Zoom, they just need to tell their advisor that they prefer to do that. And if their advisor can accommodate, they certainly will.
I'll add, you know, the same with academic success resources and other resources. We will absolutely have resources in person in the fall. They will look different, right? Instead of sitting in my office across from my desk, we might be sitting in a classroom and it might be just the two of us. And we might be wearing masks or not wearing masks. So it really will depend. If a student is more comfortable, and they may be, it'll be over Zoom, and we can do all of that. You know, I think the important thing to note is we will offer everything that we've always offered. So, and more, I think. You know, we're also looking at, in the Academic Success Center, we're looking at adding hours. So evening hours, when typically it would be really quiet or the center would be closed, so that a couple students with appropriate distancing could meet with a professional staff member, or even on a Saturday or a Sunday when there's not a lot of students. So we're really looking at adding hours and programs and services so that we can have that personal connection. I know that I get zoomed out by the end of the day. Our students will get zoomed out as well. And we're going to do our very best to make sure that we offer in person whenever we can and as needed.
Right. I think we're all zoomed out, but I've been noticing in these conversations that I've had with my colleagues across campus that because we're all used to Zoom, it actually opens up a lot of our opportunities as well. So students who can't make it to an in-person meeting or maybe are uncomfortable with that have other options. So just trying to shed a little positive light on it is, yes, we want to have all options available, but this is actually kind of exciting that there are more opportunities for people to connect.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And even thinking of the RIT 365 experiences, you know, like I said earlier, the goal is to help students experience different things that happen on campus. So let's say a glass blowing lab. Well, obviously we're not going to have students go to the glass blowing lab, but we'll do that virtually. And won't it be sort of neat afterward that students can say, oh yeah, you know, I did that thing in the glass blowing lab and I never did find that. Where is that? And then they can actually take it upon themselves to go on an adventure to find it. So lots of opportunities. I think you're right, Chelsea. I think we have to look at the positives. We're really excited to return to campus and to really support our students as we always have.
And one of the things I think is a positive for your students coming into RIT this fall is it's a little more level playing field for the students. We're first timers at everything we're doing this fall. So we're gonna say to students, I'm not sure. When they're saying to us, I'm not sure. I mean, the content we know inside and out, and we're gonna deliver it to the best of our ability, but they're gonna feel a little more like, oh, Dr. Heath is kind of like me. He's never done this before. So I think it'll help students feel comfortable and part of our community.
Absolutely. So I've been ending all of these interviews with the same question. So I'd like you two to give your #1 piece of advice for parents of incoming students. And it can be within your area of expertise or outside, but what is the one thing that you want the parents and family members watching to know?
Is that pause because you want me to start? You know, it's funny. I'm not there quite yet, but next year I will be there. I will have an incoming student. And I think the biggest thing is to trust. Trust in several things. Trust that your student is in a good place with caring people. That's #1. 2, we will do, and I'm saying us, meaning the 3 of us and the faculty and the staff and everyone at RIT, we will do everything in our power to help your student be successful and support them when they struggle. And to trust us that we'll do that, and to reach out to us when you're concerned and when you have questions and you're not sure how to guide your student, and to help us create the partnership that you've already likely developed with Chelsea and with others to really help us together get your student through.
I would echo what Heath is saying. I would also say that don't be afraid to check in with any of the 3 of us if you have a question, or if you want to check an assumption that you're working from. And I mean more about how it works at RIT rather than your student specific grades or something. But we are here to support families just as much as we are the students. So if you're not sure about how an RIT process works or how you can support your student, we are all happy to consult and support you as well as your students. So I think that's a really strong resource that we offer families, but sometimes I think parents are afraid of being branded as helicopter parents if they call and check in with one of us. So, you know, frame it for us, let us know what your concern is, and we can always help you navigate the situation from your perspective. There is one other thing I would say too is I always try to remind parents that there are some basic things that we really need your student to be able to do. And we need to make sure that they can get up out of bed on their own. And I mean that very sincerely, because every now and again, I'll have a parent check in with me and say, it's a hard thing for my son to do that. And are there services on campus that can help with that? And there aren't. So getting up and getting moving for the day is an important thing that we need students to be able to do. And the other biggie is making sure that students respond to communication and outreach. That's a huge one. I do have parents sometimes contact me and say, my student doesn't check their email, so can you call them or can you text them? And that's a big concern for us. We need students to be able to communicate with us through multiple channels. So if they prefer text, I understand that completely, but if they get an outreach via email, they need to respond to the person and say, can we continue to communicate via text or a phone call or a meeting in person, because I'm a little nervous about email or something. So those are my two big things, and I mean them very sincerely, but they're very, very important things.
Yeah, absolutely. That was all really good advice. So thank you both for that and for joining. It's always a pleasure to work with both of you. I look forward to actually seeing you on campus sometime soon instead of over a video. And to the parents and family members listening, to add to Lynn's point of things that your student needs to do, this is my weekly reminder that you can help us prepare our students for campus this fall by having some of these conversations, not just about the topics, but about our COVID procedures and policies that we'll want them to follow. We want them to be prepared to wear a mask and practice social distancing and wash their hands and stay home when they're sick. So you can help us by having these conversations. Oh, there's Heath's mask. Yes. So help us by preparing so they can match Heath when they're on campus, because that's what we're all going to be looking like. So thank you, Heath and Lynn. Thank you, families, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.